if I can come up with a joke that someone thinks of every time they're about to throw a compostable cup in the wrong bin, or if I can come up with a joke that every time someone is about to decide where the budget goes for whether they bother checking out scope 1, 2 and 3 properly or whether they fudge it, and they remember my joke, that could change the world.
Soaring global temperatures and all the crops failing and all the animals dying and mass starvation and stuff like that. That's climate change, and that's not really suitable for comedy, right? There certainly isn't very much of it about very serious business. But I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I ran a podcast for years that was all about finding stuff that was funny about humans and their various flimsy ways of responding to it, and my guest this month on Your Brain on Climate agrees. I'm going to be talking to Stuart Goldsmith. Now, Stuart is an amazing stand-up comedian. He's been doing it for years and years and years and years and years and years. Very, very funny. He's also an incredible expert on comedy because he's been running a podcast interviewing comedians called The Comedian's Comedian for a very long time indeed. I think it might be one of the first podcasts I ever regularly listened to. He's interviewed absolutely everyone. He understands comedy as a thing, how it works, whether it's an art or a science or a craft, and we talk about all that. But he also understands what people find funny. And he's come to the conclusion that there is plenty of stuff within climate change, or at the very least within how humans deal with it, or at the very, very least within how he deals with it, that we can and, more importantly, should laugh at. And so we're going to be talking all about that. And we talk about Stuart's own relationship to comedy, why it is that now, after years of talking about other stuff, he's decided to get serious about getting funny about climate change. We talk about all aspects of this. It's really, really fascinating. Is comedy an art, a science, a craft? What is it? Why has Stuart now decided to devote the rest of his comedy life to talking about climate? What does he hope will happen? Is he worried about, laughing at something so tragic? Actually, what does it do for us to laugh at this stuff? All of it. If you've ever thought about comedy, you've ever thought about climate and comedy, or you just want to have a good old listen to a very funny and interesting bloke, strap yourself in for this one. Just the usual note that when you hear this noise, it usually denotes wisdom. Now, Stuart is wise, and it may very well denote wisdom in this episode, but it might just as likely denote a good joke that I've managed to find a YouTube clip of that Stuart is talking about, and I'll try and do that as much as possible. Thank you so much to all the people who give money to the show on Patreon. Could definitely do with some more to keep this show on the road. I do pay my guests. That's massively important to me. You can join them, a couple of quid a month, at patreon.com/yourbrainonclimate. Do drop me an email to hello@yourbrainonclimate and tell me what you think of the show, and please do drop a review into your podcast medium of choice. That's how come I can get wonderful guests like Stuart, because they go, ooh, that's an interesting podcast, and off we go. Right, so here is the chat with Stuart. I started by asking him, and this might have been a daft question to ask a professional comedian, what he finds funny. Turns out, lots of stuff.
Your brain on climate.
God, okay, so I've been a comic for nearly 18 years, and before that I was a street performer for 10 years. So I've been in the business of funny my whole life. I've never had a real job, and I've always kind of scratched a living and more recently earned a living from comedy. And I think comedy is a phenomenally broad church. If I think of the things that particularly appeal to me, I love things that, like, if you get down to like the brass tacks of comedy, it has to be surprising and yet satisfying. A joke has to surprise. That's why it's so impossibly difficult to write jokes. It's why it's so hard, because how can something be surprising if it's satisfying, and vice versa? And so because I'm looking at it from the inside, because I'm a comedian, it's much harder to surprise comedians. So we tend not to laugh at much. We tend to sit at the back of the comedy club nodding and going, yes, that's funny. I approve of that.
I appreciate the structure.
I can exactly, see. Yeah, exactly. But often, if I've got a big, loud hooting laugh, it's not quite Jimmy Carr level, but it's approaching it. And often I feel like I risk ruining shows because I'll laugh at the setup because I can see where the setup's going. And I'm thinking, oh, that's clever. And then that'll make me laugh. So the things that I like to watch most, I mean, at the moment, I'm watching lots of Mike Birbiglia, brilliant storytelling comic who podcast fans will know from This American Life, who's gone on to kind of do big storytelling in sort of his comedy. He's a club stand-up, but now he does big storytelling shows on Broadway, which are moment to moment as funny as anything you'd find in a comedy club. But I also love Simon Munnery. He was my first great comedy love, and his beautiful little one-liners, all men are brothers, hence war. Just the things that kind of, I love how his brain could, Mitch Hedberg as well, someone who could just attack a subject and make you think about it in a whole new way. And then I also really am very fond of the kind of sort of madcap, I mean, clown isn't quite the right word, or it's a deceptive word, clown, because it still makes people think of red noses and people pouring custard down each other's trousers in the circus, but kind of contemporary theatre, stand-up clown hybrid stuff. People like Spencer Jones, who your listeners might know from Inside the Mind of Herbert Clunkerdunk, that was on the you'll be able to find that on iPlayer. Just a sort of a riotous kind of, almost like a Young Ones. Just, the moment I was sharing this with my 7-year-old the other day, the moment in the Young Ones where the camera crash zooms on a matchbox on a shelf, and the matchbox opens its little puppet mouth and says, "Don't look at me, I'm irrelevant." Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah. I love all of that, but I love all of it. I love watching a toddler fall over. Do you know what I mean? I love just all of it. Even the stuff that's sort of anxiously, kind of desperately grasping for laughs on TikTok. Do you know what I mean? There's I love all of it. I love all of it, and I find that really sustaining in my life, because no matter how hard it is to try and master it, to try and conquer it and go, I'm going to on stage, I'm going to somehow tap into the big funny, the stuff that's in the ether, and try and act as a conduit for it. It can be hard, and there are some long drives home in the middle of the night when you go, God, long walks home. But I always come back to thinking, I just love to laugh. A joke in a pub, something daft one of my children says, I just spend my life laughing, and that feels very pure and very consistent, even if I myself am neither consistent nor pure.
So you like everything. So you like from knob jokes to sort of, very elegantly worked out puns and quips.
I don't mind a knob joke. I would say things that are elegant and deft and kind of textured make me laugh more, because I'm looking at comedy from the inside. And a knob joke, you can see it coming a mile off. I find if someone, if a one-liner comic goes, right, I'm going to do some dirty stuff now, I can't laugh at it, because my brain's ahead of it thinking, this is going to be dirty. Where's that going? How could you misinterpret that word? What's the ambiguity there? If I know the subject, do you know what I mean? If someone said, I'm going to do 20 minutes on Windows, they'd have to be very good for me to not guess the window punchlines moments before they happen, and consequently sort of spoil it for myself. But yes,
it's all about the framing, isn't it, that kind of joke?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. It's all about
Christ.
Crikey.
Oh, yeah, no.
Keep up.
Yes, my mind works so fast, Dave, that I failed to notice your great window pun. Very good.
Memo to Dave, do not try to take on professional comedian at comedy. But because as well as being a comedian, you have also one of the, I think you were one of the first podcasts I ever listened to. I mean, you this massively long-running, still going show?
Yes, still going. Episode 431 went out last week.
Extraordinary. Called The Comedian's Comedian, right? Interviewing comedians, like everyone you've ever heard of and loads of people you haven't, about comedy. And do you think you've learned something about the art of making people laugh that isn't just what you find funny, but what is it? What is it really that is the art of it?
I suppose that the main thing I've learned from the show, and this is I say it's the only comedy podcast that isn't funny. It's like a really deep forensic look at what people's processes, their creative development, what they wanted from their career, what they got from their career, what it cost them, all of those kind of things. What have I learned? I think the key thing that I've learned is that there's no way that it's supposed to be. I think comics are very brave once we step on stage. The first time we ever step on stage, we become a comic, and it's this enormous act of heroism and bravery. I mean, I don't think it's not running into a war zone, and it's not saving someone from a burning building, but it is terrifying.
I don't know how you shake
with adrenaline.
I don't know how you do it. I can't think of anything. Me and my podcast I used to host, Sustainable, we once got asked to do it. We did one stand-up thing. Not only were we dog shit, but it was the scaredest I've ever been about anything.
It's very, very frightening. Yes, it's astonishingly frightening. But we're brave once we master that fear. And then as soon as we've overcome it and gone, yes, I'm doing it, then we tend to sort of revert back to going, now, what does everyone else do? What should I be doing? But the real secret to comedy, I think, to being comedy that lasts and is significant and resonant and meaningful to people, is you have to continually feel that. You have to continually push yourself into that place of fear where you're saying, what next? What next is new? What can I do? The job of a comic is to do exactly what you want. But the whole industry will tell you, no, the job of a comic is to see who the people you like are and try and copy them and what their journey is and what their approach is and what they do. So very, very hard. And that's one of the joys of it, frustrating though it is. It's never finished. It can never be finished. You know, you can always be thinking of a joke, even if you're lying and having an MRI scan. You could be working, you could be thinking, you know, and it will never be finished because the job is to constantly uproot yourself and surprise yourself and overreach.
So it's an art, not a science. Like there isn't a way to make the perfect joke.
I would say that it's a craft. It is both an art and a science. Yeah, I would say pretentiously that it is a craft. There is no formula. And I think that's to come back to my earlier point. I think I went into the podcast thinking, I love this and I want to learn the formula. Yeah. And while there are formulae, there are, you know, rules of three. And, you know, there are like if you finish a word on a plosive sound or a hard sound like a K, you know, kayak's funnier than canoe, stuff like that. There are just sort of words. And then there are people, I always remember an interview with Vic and Bob, not one of mine, but an interview where they said they'd have a half an hour argument over the word wool and getting, you know, like the word wool, and it's just being funny and just exactly in the right place. There are certainly rules to it and structure and craft, but what I learnt is that there is no one structure, there is no one formula, and there is no one approach, you know, and that's my comedy career has benefited from that. My comedy craft has benefited from that because almost every comic I've spoken to, and as I say, over 400 of them over the last 12 years, almost everyone says, oh, I don't really have a system. And then you pick a bit and they explain their system and they unroll. I always think of it like the toolkit of a cat burglar. Well, I've got one of them for doing that. And I've got one of them for going around there and a thing with a diamond on the end and a sucky bit. You know, everyone's got their own unique version of how they approach it, what drives them, what satisfies them, what they're really in it for, what they're running away from or towards. And those things are all vastly different. So there is no one way of doing it. And it can be a trap and a trick to convince yourself, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I've got to be more like them or more like them.
Interesting. I heard an interview with John Lloyd the other day. Big hero of mine. Again, not one of yours, but I'm sure, I don't know if have you spoken to John?
No, I have, yes. He's one of mine in the sense that I've had him.
You've had him, yeah.
And the Panini sticker of comedians, got. I've got him, yeah.
And he was saying that he, on the whole sort of art versus craft thing, he was saying that he can fix someone's comedy script. Like he can make people laugh, but he doesn't really know why. Like he knows how to do it from a craft point of view, but the actual sort of essence of what it is that is, you know, the magic bit, why is it that someone reacts in that way? He said he didn't quite know what that was. So what is it? Like, you know, you make me laugh. What's happening, do you think, in my brain?
I would say the science of it is not really my strongest suit. You would need to talk to someone like Professor Sophie Scott about that, who's an incredible scientist who does loads of research into laughter. And I've done gigs with her where she's hooked me up to all sorts of machinery and, you know, taking readings and so forth of the experience of doing a gig. The audience are hooked up to all sorts of machines. As I understand it, it is a benign. I mean, I know a bit more about the kind of the language of it. It's a benign violation. So we are being violated in a way that we know is safe, and we are having concepts smashed together in a way that we'd never thought. You take two things. That's what a joke basically is. You take two things, you smash them together in a way you'd never thought about. The answer is surprising and yet satisfying, and so it provokes this kind of this sort of surprise response. I also know, in inverted commas, I also understand that there is a big communality to laughter, whereby a big communality, you can tell I'm not a scientist, whereby it is a shared social release, whereby if someone laughs at something, it's a pressure release, it's a social pressure release, whereby you can go, God, I'm a bit worried about this. You know, if you're if you're sort of out and about or on public transport and something a bit weird happens, there's a bit of an odd person, and then you're a bit nervous, what's going to happen? And then something happens, or they get off the train and everyone around you sort of shares a look like, right. You know, because we're, you know, it turns out the violation was benign. You know, so there is something to that of it, I'm sure. There's some sort of a release whereby we're worried. And I think, one of the things I always think is that I wish at school, among the lessons they should teach at school, resilience, mental health, how to bleed a radiator, one of them should be, people, if you want people to like you, tell a story where you lose. Because that's what we connect with other people. If someone presents themselves and says, I'm a winner, I've done all this great stuff, in order to make you like them, no one likes them. But what the comedian says is, we're all losers, and this is a terrible thing I just lost. Oh, on the way here, if someone turns up, I'm a parent of 2 children, and if someone comes to a children's birthday party with their kid, you've not met the grown-up before, and you say hello and they say, God, I'm sorry, I'm absolutely covered in stuff. You kind of go, oh, I like this person, because they're accepting the reality that we all must accept, which is that we're all sort of the gutter. I'm always thinking, I meet people in a business context. I do speaking to business about resilience and personal sustainability and things. And I get scared. I walk into that room and I go, these are proper people. And then by the time I've met them and gone, oh no, they're just wiggling naked pink things who've put on some clothes and left the house, just like all of us. And that's incredible. That communality I find sort of constantly hilarious and reassuring.
It's that familiarity, isn't it? I'm thinking about your thing about what the satisfaction and what is satisfying about something surprising. It's when it's surprising and you go, oh, that's surprising, but also it's true. There's the truth in it, right? The
truth, and also the detail. The detail. I mean, I've got to think of a better example than this, but the example I find myself giving is if I say parenting is hard, well, sure, it is hard, but that's not funny. But if I say parenting is so hard that the other day I had my 3-year-old in my arms at the top of the stairs and I briefly considered hurling him down them. Then people that's a violation. You'd need to trust me to find that benign. I'd need to have built up a relationship with an audience. But the specificness of any parent will go, oh God, I've had that thought. And you're sort of admitting something awful. Yeah. And the further you drill down into the specifics of a situation, the funnier something becomes, and more specifically, the more universal it is. And again, that's a really weird paradox at the heart of comedy, that the more specific you are, the more universal the observation becomes, the more relatable something becomes. When you would think, and that's why comedy costs us something, and that's why all comedians have been through. I've got a bit in my show at the moment about going mad in forests and kind of. I'm always prefacing it by saying, look, I don't know if this is relatable. I won't go into the bit, but it's about the sort of the thinness of the membrane between thinking to yourself, hey, this is great, wife, kids, great job, everything's fine. And then in a blink of an eye, suddenly you think, God, I hate this. I'm failing and losing, and I resent the children. I resent you more. I made them. I only met you, and like getting into the reality of that, you would think, it costs me something to say that on stage, because I'm like, are they just going to look at me like I'm a lunatic? And if you say it in the right way, with the honesty and the right sort of energy to it, people go, yes, brother. Do you know what I mean? They say, yes, friend, me too.
So let's talk about climate change and stuff. You have got a new show called Spoilers.
Yep.
Yes, which is all about climate change. And
it's about climate change, and it's about kind of I've been writing it for the last year and a half, I would think, year-ish, and I keep asking myself, what is it about? What is it about? It's about climate change. I thought, no, it's about the climate crisis. And I thought, no, it's about my anxiety about the climate crisis. It's about, and now I suppose it's about sort of hopelessness in the face of the climate crisis, and how to attack that hopelessness and how to try to stop feeling it. Because we all want to help. Well, no, not we all want to help. I mean, there's been a whole journey where I've been in rooms saying to people, hey, we're all terrified of the climate crisis. And audiences have folded their arms and said, we are not. And I've had to learn how to say, you should be, but then I also want, part of what I wanted to do is stop people feeling so afraid. And I realised, well, in order to stop them feeling so afraid, first I've got to really scare them. I've got to tell them how afraid they should be. So I've got to scar them in order to heal them, So yes, what the show is about is about my reaction to the fear and the anxiety. I know not to call it climate anxiety because that pathologizes it, and arguably it's a reasonable reaction to feel scared, climate grief. Some people call it climate dread. Those are reasonable feelings that more and more of us are feeling. And there have been lots of points along the way where I when there was an Extinction Rebellion protest a while ago now, maybe end of last year, where scientists started gluing themselves to things. And I went, it's the dial has just ticked up another notch in my sense that I cannot keep ignoring this. How can I I suppose it's me wrestling with the question, how can I live my life? How can I look my children in the eye knowing what we as a population are doing to the planet, what we've been doing for decades since before any of us were born, and it's just me grappling with it. Now, my comedy has always been an attempt to grapple with a problem, but those problems previously have been very internal problems. How hard parenting is, or mental health, or I have ADHD, but I didn't know for most of my life. And so there were things where I was like, God, why can't I cope with this, that, and the other? And I'd be going, this, or a domestic problem. My wife has misophonia. She hates the sound of me eating. It's that condition where any kind of mouth noises, and I won't do examples.
You'll get kicked off immediately of that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I also I've got a herniated esophagus, and every so often I have to do a horrible sounding projection cough, and it's this ludicrous loop whereby it's the worst thing. The sound of something, eating something I need to do in order to live makes her wish I were dead. I would do jokes about those problems. And with this show, I am trying to tackle a much bigger problem and to find out where I stand. What do I think we should do? What do I think we should do? Should we start gluing ourselves to things? Should we all do that? Should we, how can we feel hope? How can, do we have an ethical obligation to personally start dismantling the structures of fossil fuels? Should we smash the system? Should we use the system? Should we try and convert the system? So, you know what I mean? We will need the infrastructure of the big fossil fuel companies. They've got the infrastructure. We're going to need that, Yeah. So what the hell do we do? And so the show is me grappling with that. And what I'm finding is, more and more now the show is coming together, there's more fluency to it. I'm able to be my funniest self because I'm not, for a good 6 months it was me just going statistics and fear into a microphone to a Friday night comedy club audiences that weren't expecting it.
I can imagine. Did you get out the Al Gore presentation, just start it with 20 minutes of gloomy slides?
Well, not that. I don't do slides. My rule is, as a former street performer, my rule is no props ever. But I'm not dragging a suitcase around anymore for anyone. But I would, how do you navigate that? How do you get people to accept that things are bad, to accept that we are complicit, that we are culpable? But then even that, all of these things, just these loops, how culpable are we? What difference can we make? If I use my compostable cup, is that good? Is that greenwash? Does it get composted using this special industrial process? Or do I think I've done some good there and chuck it in with the cardboard, thus ruining the batch? I've been learning as I go, listening to lectures, trying to work out how to overcome my own climate anxiety. And as I started to overcome it, the show became me saying to people, this is how I'm starting to work on my own climate dread. And maybe this is how you can do it as well. And thankfully, at the time of recording, we are just in the last month, I'm getting to a stage it's the end of June now, so the show opens at the Edinburgh Festival at the beginning of August. I'm just getting to the stage whereby people are coming up afterwards and saying, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I need to be I need to hear someone talk about this.
And the essence of what you're doing is basically going, it's all right to not really have a clue about this. Is it that more than anything else?
The essence is, I was so scared that I didn't want to find out any more. But I found out more, and now I'm more scared, but I'm also more hopeful. So please stop burying your heads in the sand and engage with it.
That's
the message.
Well, the last episode of Your Brain of Climate was with Rupert Reed, and we were talking about honesty, and his central idea is that you have to be honest about it and face it, and then from that comes this kind of liberating thing where you can go, right, okay, look, right, I've got it, and now what? Sounds like you're doing that as well, right?
Yes, I hope so. I mean, along the lines of I'm not an activist, and I'm sort of been dipping my toe in activism a little bit here and there, but a parallel I would draw, if this isn't too weird of a thing to raise, the comedy industry, as you may or may not know, is rife. Is rife the right word? There are a lot of predators in the comedy industry. There are a lot of people in this. There's no oversight. There's no HR. it's all individual people who've worked their way up into this very loose freelance thing that we call the comedy industry, which is really a bunch of satellite gigs and a bunch of satellite comedians. And people have historically, as we know, gotten away with some very shady behaviour. And over the last 5 years really, I suppose, I'm pleased to say that is now far less acceptable, and we are organically growing structures in place to stop that being the case, and long may that process accelerate and continue. But I through the podcast, a lot of comedians, it's a niche podcast, a lot of comedians listen to it, and I was made aware that I have a certain amount of soft power, and there are a couple of older feminist female comics who I get in touch with and say, I've just heard this about person X. They're someone we're not close, but they're I'd call them a friend. And now I'm having to reappraise my relationship. Hey, female comedians, what do I do? Right? What do I do? A kind of slightly pathetic cap in hand. Oh, I'm having to sort of deal with this for the first time. And what I realised, with the help of some very clever, on it women who've been fighting the good fight for years, was that they don't know either.
Yeah.
And that was to bring it back to climate. I kind of had a shift in my thinking. I went, oh, it's not that the people who have the problem know how to resolve it and I just have to get on board. It's that we all have to work out for ourselves what the hell to do. What the hell do we do? They don't know either. And that I think what made me think of that was that idea that it's kind of liberating to go, oh, this is a huge problem. And if I stop pretending it isn't, and then I become one of the people who at least recognises that it's a huge problem rather than running away from it and trying not to think about it, which I did for years.
I think in general in life, I think it's very liberating to realise that everyone's making everything up as they go along. Right?
For sure. And I think I realised that a long time ago, but I didn't ever really apply that to, like, just if you think of the people who I'm sure you've spoken to in a long podcasting career talking about climate change, the different people who think it's all about carbon capture, and the next person goes, nothing to do, carbon capture won't work. We've got to work with the fossil fuel companies. We've got to dismantle capitalism. Everyone's got a different view of what we've got to do. And the answer, as we know, and you can attribute this quote, I'm afraid I can't. What do we do about climate change? The answer is everything. We have to do everything about it. And I suppose the biggest single influence on both my kind of very soft radicalisation towards being a comic who's now starting to think I may well be talking about the climate for the rest of my career. It's not going to go away. Hey, Dave, thank heavens it's going to be topical the whole time.
There's plenty of work in it, mate. Yeah, plenty of work. Yeah, we're not going anywhere. This is fine. Yeah.
But a big part of it was Ayana Elizabeth Johnson and her, I don't know if you know her, she's a marine biologist, and she talks about how we have to have a climate Venn diagram. And it's the intersection of the circles of something the climate needs, something I'm good at, something that I enjoy. And I enjoy communicating, and I'm good at communicating, and maybe the climate needs some communication. If I can, as a comic, if I can say the unsayable fast and eloquently and kind of call people on their bullshit, that's what's one of the things about observational comedy. We lie to ourselves, and we all pretend that we're more than just wriggling pink naked things that have put on clothes and pretending to be a society. And when you point it out in the right way, people laugh and they go, no, you're right, that is true. And if I can do that with our kind of willful blindness towards the climate crisis, if I can do that with our propensity to put our heads in the sand, then maybe that is my climate side hustle. Maybe that's the thing I can do that can help.
Your brain on climate.
I know you have a vested interest in the answer to this question. You've got a show all about not knowing what to do about climate change, and isn't that ridiculous? Is it funny? Like, do you know what I mean? Is it funny? Do people laugh at it? And
yes.
What do you think that tells us about why someone hasn't done a show like this before? Like,
I can't claim to be the first person who's ever done a comedy show about the climate.
I know Matt Winning's been doing it for a long time.
Matt Winning's been doing it for a long time. Yeah. Brilliant comedian and actual scientist. There's a guy called John Long, I believe, who I've yet to meet, but he had a series on Radio 4. There's other people. I've seen clips of lots of American comics. People like I'm going to forget her name. Is it Jen Kirkman, I think, or Mark Maron doing bits about it? I think, what was the question?
How come there's not more comedy about climate change? I guess is the question.
I think one of the things is, it's taken me a long time to learn to make it funny. And so in order to get through the first 5 gigs where your new joke, like if I do a new joke about shopping or God knows, mugs, if I do a joke about a coffee mug and it doesn't get a laugh, I move on to the next new joke. If I do a joke about the acidification of the oceans and it doesn't get a laugh, everyone's sad. I've made the audience sad by raising the spectre of something really awful. And I'm trying to apply it to myself in a way that is deeper than, with all due respect to like Radio 4 or, a kind of a topical comic on a news programme. What they will tend to do is, I think of it as like the tombola of funny ideas. We know who the fat politician is. We know who the drunk politician is. And they put things in the tombola of ideas. And that there is a real skill to that, and I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at keeping up with the, political news. So I don't want to look down on that, but I think that it requires determination. You need to burn with a bit of zeal for a subject. You need to go, I'm going to do this despite the audience. I'm going to learn how to make them eat it. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to go, I've said that to friends. What are you going to do tonight? I'm going to go on stage in Birmingham to a comedy club audience who are out having a night out and they've paid for babysitters, and I'm going to do a load of jokes about climate change and I'm going to make them eat it. I'm going to learn to make them eat it, and I'm going to learn to make them like it. Yeah. And that is hard. And I have the bandwidth for it. I'm privileged to have the bandwidth for it. And I have enough going on in my comedy career. I'm commercially successful enough at comedy and my podcasting and my various corporate things that I've started doing the last few years that I have the bandwidth. And also, I got to a stage where, shall I admit this? This is me being risky. Yeah. This is me risking and being specific in order, who knows, maybe it'll be universal. I've drunk very deeply from the well of comedy. I've been doing it for a long time. With the podcast, I've been studying it as well as doing it. I've been studying it and learning it and thinking about it near constantly for the best part of 20 years. I'm not bored of it, but I do know what it feels like to smash the roof off a room and then drive home with a lovely buzz. And that buzz lasts for shorter and shorter time. I'm not bored of comedy. I love comedy. I can't imagine a future where I don't do comedy. But part of the challenge of how do I make this horrible thing funny, it's almost like a nexus. There's a confluence of that challenge is suddenly much more appealing because it's a fresh challenge. Also in the nexus, I have the bandwidth because I'm doing enough stuff now that I'm not, I can afford to risk it. I can afford to annoy a club promoter by him going, you really bummed them out there, and you really only just sold it. You saved it the last minute. And I go, I know, trust me. I've got the relationships with promoters where I can say, I'm going to do something different. Trust me, it'll be all right. So a lot of things have come together that maybe for other comics, they're busy going, I've got big dreams and I want to be on TV, or I'm still on TV and I want to stay on TV, or I've got a huge tour coming up and I have to sell it and I can't risk it. I can risk it. And because when I realised that, I have to spend that privilege, haven't I? If I've got the bandwidth, I owe it to the world, Dave. I owe the world my comedy, but I do owe it somehow. There's a thing it's a bit in the show. I don't know if it'll stay. I did a new material thing. I did a 40-minute preview, and it was up and down. And I was sat afterwards in the dressing room going, God, I don't know. Should I keep doing this? And a younger comic who happened to be female and happened to be brown was in the dressing room, and she said, I really enjoyed that. You've got to crack on with it. You've got to keep doing it. And I said, it's really hard getting people on board with stuff they don't want to hear about and don't care about. And she didn't say as much, but her vibe as she looked at me, she sort of silently said the sentence, no shit, white man. And I kind of went, oh yeah. Yeah. I have had the absolute privilege for my whole career of having them like me and trust me and buy into me. Me more so than a lot of other comics. I'm the warm-up man I'm the studio warm-up for the Graham Norton show. I am trusted to make a bunch of people feel good. The first review I ever had, as soon as this guy walks on stage, you can feel everyone relax. That's a privilege. And I've been using that privilege to sort of satisfy myself. I want to talk about how hard my life is, And now I feel like, no, I have to spend some of that privilege. I have to go, if I can win people over and charm them, I've got the opportunity to talk about something really real. So when that moment happened, that was another like, oh yeah, I've got to build my crowd and get them and convert people. And that's the most satisfying thing that can happen. Now, as I said, in the last month, people are starting, I'll finish the show, I'll finish a preview, and people afterwards, when they leave, they won't just go, hey, that was brilliant, you're funny, well, feed my ego, well done, brilliant, you're funny. Now they'll go, oh, thank you, I needed that.
Right, because climate change itself, the thing, not funny.
Not funny.
We can agree.
Well.
Right, you see.
Well, is that, I mean, obviously we're talking in sort of big abstract concepts. I don't think you can say anything's not funny. I mean, look at the final episode of Blackadder Goes Forth. The Somme, or whatever, it wasn't the Somme, but, the trenches. Yeah. And not funny, but they made it funny.
We lived through it. The Great War, 1914 to 1917. Hip, hip, hooray!
I'm afraid not.
They found a way to make it funny. We laugh and we feel. So I think anything, if done deftly, elegantly, bravely, can be, they can laugh and they can feel. We're used to the idea of, lots of people, I don't want to even get into, comedy cancellation and, cancel culture, the rest of it. That is a played out conversation in comedy, forgive me. But we're used to seeing people treat big subjects badly or lazily, and we go, that's not funny. God, a local comedy club, some bloke's done a joke about sexual assault. Everyone's like, God, I don't want to hear about that, But it can be done. It can be done in the right way. You can make anything funny.
Because it's that Douglas Adams thing, isn't it? So I used to do this comedy podcast about the environment, and people would say to us, are you sure you want to laugh about that? And we said, well, the Douglas Adams thing, you zoom far enough out from Earth and you look at what we're doing and you have to laugh at it because there's something so kind of absurd about humans being humans and kind of, this, like you say, sort of squishy, confused bags of water, not really knowing what's going on. So, but has anyone ever come to you or come at you and gone, you shouldn't be laughing about that, mate? You've not had that yet?
No, I've had a couple of walkouts where people, I don't get any data on the walkouts. Are they climate deniers? Do you know what I mean? I don't get any data. They left, so no data. So I did say someone left and said he's a preacher. We didn't come here to be preached at. And I was maybe being a bit zealous and okay, but maybe I am preaching a bit. And maybe if I can preach in a funny way, that's my job. My job as a comedian is to do what the hell I want. And if it's funny enough, then it works. So if I can be a funny preacher, then fine. I'm no Sam Kinison, but it, so I don't get much data on the people that aren't up for it. I've made a policy decision early on. I'm not gonna argue with anyone about whether or not it's real. At the beginning of the show, near the beginning of the show at the moment, I'm saying, this is the show, it's about climate crisis. And just to be clear, I haven't said this on the posters, but I am against the climate crisis. It is real and I don't like it, and there will be people there who don't believe it, who don't believe in me, who think it's, who think, oh, Stu's found an angle, there'll be people thinking, there'll be everything under the sun. I did a show recently, I mentioned I've got a bit about Extinction Rebellion and personal responsibility and what have you. It's a wider sort of topic. I may take it out and the next year's show might be all about climate activism and I might save it up for that and expand upon it. But I said, anyone here on the Extinction Rebellion mailing list? And an older lady, kind of like boomer age lady, said, oh no. And I said, no one's ever said that before. What do you mean? She says, no, they're paid by the government. And I thought, well, okay, I didn't have much to say about it. It kind of the sort of the illogic of that kicked me out of my comedy self, and it took me a minute to get back in the game. I thought, oh right, but comedy's about learning, and I came off and I made a note and I said, I've got to work out a thing to say when people like her are in the room. Yeah. When people who get their news from Facebook, from their echo chamber, whatever it is. If people are if I say, who's worried about climate change? And someone goes, it's not real. I've got to cope with that. But I've made a policy decision. I'm not going to waste time. There's no point trying to convert people. I'm not. That's not my job. I'm not a mind changer. I'm a mind opener, maybe. So all the way at every stage, I'm learning, and going. Okay, and that's the great thing about comedy is you iterate. You just iterate night after night. You try it again. Did that work? Did that not work? How could that be better? And if this is the work of my life, as it may be, then long may that continue. I will continue iterating and I'll continue working out. In comedy, the problems are the material. So climate change is a colossal problem. It's a problem with fractal, multiple, infinite problems spiraling off it. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to find problems in. And in comedy, we find funny in ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguity. What should we think? What should we say? How should I feel? So there's so much clay there to work with.
One of the things, when my old co-host Ol and I stopped doing Sustainababble, we were interviewed about the 8 years of doing the show, and we talked about one of the reasons that we stopped. And one of the things we were never quite sure about, we knew that being funny about humans not knowing what the hell to do about climate change was funny, and we knew that people would come to us and go, thank you for that. We had very similar reactions, I think, to a lot of what you've described. Don't pretend to be as good at it as you. But I think we worried a little bit that it might take their heat away and it might take their fire away. And that maybe that something about laughing might diffuse an energy rather than channel it. And people would come out and they go, oh, it's all right. Stuart's told me I don't have to worry so much about this now. And I feel better. And, sure. I feel I've laughed and it's all gone away. Do you worry about that?
That's a brilliant question. And it hasn't really come up because so far, I've been so far in the other direction. People have come out going, oh, Christ, I'm even more worried about this. And my job has been wind them back to a place where it can be funny. I totally understand, though. I don't want to be a shill. I don't want to, do you know what I mean? I don't want to end up doing the work of the fossil fuel companies going, guys, we don't need to worry. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, and what I hope I'm saying, what I believe I'm saying is that you have to find out more. And I think the more I work on it, and that's the message of this year's show, don't be afraid. Be not afraid. Find out more, then be more afraid, then be more active, then be not afraid. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the message. So I don't worry about that for this show. I think that it is something that's occurred to me. And as we said, as I said at the beginning, comedy is a pressure release. Maybe we don't need a pressure release. We need there to be pressure. We need to build up ahead of pressure. But I also think in terms of people's mental health, I think my general understanding of it is that we will do more and better work for the climate if we are not feeling lonely with our thoughts, 100%. With our darkest thoughts. Yeah. If we are feeling ashamed and guilty and selfish, and I'm secretly making plans to, if I'm secretly stockpiling antibiotics, you know what I mean? There's two sorts of preppers, isn't there? There's the right-wing prepper who hoards and the left-wing prepper who makes connections. And I want to do that one. I want to do the making connections. I want to say, let's hold hands, admit how scared we are, not so that we then become inactive, but so that we stop becoming inactive. We become active because we go, oh, there's a bit, again, it's a bit I'm working on, and maybe it's next year's show. There's a bit about hypocrisy. I'll just say this. I'll say my thought to you, and it won't be funny, but this is a thing I'm trying to make funny at this stage. Part of the reason people don't take action, I think, is that we are worried about being called hypocrites. That's true of myself. I look into myself. Part of the reason I haven't taken action, I'm worried about being a hypocrite. I'm wrapped up in the fossil fuels. I've got 2 diesel vehicles. Can I drive my diesel van to a climate protest, or is that insane? That makes me a hypocrite. Well, I would say no. Drive your diesel van to a climate protest, but don't park right there. Go to that protest, participate in it, be bigger than the boa constrictor of the fossil fuels wrapped around you, accept that, because if you don't go, nothing will change. If you go 6 months later, a year later, you might change it. You might think, I can't have this diesel van anymore. So don't let the fear of being a hypocrite make you become inactive. We're all hypocrites. None of us are behaving as we really. What's that again? I can't attribute this. My memory's terrible, but these I'm magpieing these little words and phrases. We're all climate deniers. None of us is behaving as we should behave if we really honestly believed it.
Yeah.
That's the scientist gluing yourself to things mentality. So I'm doing a 2-pronged attack where I've got the comedy show, which is I'm trying to speak to the people, and I'm trying to shake people and go, not shake them awake. No, I'm not like, I'm no authority on this. What I am an authority on is being funny. And so I am trying to be funny at people, to crack into them, to tap them like a chocolate orange. You tap it and they go flum. And then maybe they're able to take more meaningful action, have more meaningful conversations. And a friend of mine I go running with said, one of the mums at school, she was saying to me, God, I just fell down an absolute climate void. I just fell down a hole and I just got so worried and stressed. And she said, you should talk to Stu. And I went, yeah, I can do that. I can make you feel less alone and more like we're all in it together, and then maybe we will be. And then the other prong of the attack is, I mentioned this kind of corporate stuff. I've got a concept which you tell me what you think. I've been interviewing lots of
right, yeah, bring it.
I've been interviewing lots of directors of sustainability about this concept and saying, could this work? Could you see this working? Not pitching it, but kind of building it. And a lot of them have said, God, yes, please. So the plan is, I go to directors of sustainability. I say, I'm a climate comedian and I'm going to come and do I've got a big corporate pedigree. I'm great at getting the tone right and I can do it live, in person, all the rest of it, and online. You're director of sustainability for somewhere. I come to you and I say, your comms need a bit of recharging, probably. What would you say if you book me to come and do my climate comedy under your ESG, whatever it is, under your budget? We'll do a briefing. And I'm good at saying the unsayable. So you tell me the stuff you want to say to your CEO if you had them up against a wall and could slap them. Just think this. Tell me that. I'll make it funny and I'll sneak it in. And then in 6 months from now, you have your budget review and you can say, you remember, like that comedian said, where we all see you laughing. So it's like a Trojan horse for getting the ideas in there.
Well, look, I think it's a wonderful idea, and don't nick it, anyone. That's Stuart's. This is proof. But
you'd need to be very funny and zealous to nick it,
and quick, I imagine. But I think it speaks, just to wrap this all up a bit, it speaks to what we've been talking about all the way through, that there's something about shattering that sort of persona that we all have. Right, I'm thinking about climate change now, and so I get on my serious persona and I use my serious language, and I don't think about like nice things like fluffy kittens and what I think and all the weird stuff I think inside. I think, how can I show that I'm being serious about this? And I think it shatters it. And when you shatter it and you give people permission to go, this is sort of pit, this is weird, isn't it? I don't know what to do either. I do a lot of this in my day job, right? You can have different conversations with people that actually goes, maybe we can just talk like a human about this. Should we do that now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All this stuff, the last 5 years, I've been doing this thing for businesses where I talk about resilience from the perspective of comedians. I go, from the podcast, this is how Bill Burr deals with this. This is how Jimmy Carr or Sarah Millican or Reginald D. Hunter deal with when it goes wrong, how they deal with it afterwards. So I've been doing that for a few years. Really enjoy it. When I have the briefings with like pre-show, like a week before, I'll talk to someone high up and I'll say, what are your people worried about? And what do you think they're worried about that they're not telling you? And people will open up. They'll do that chocolate orange thing. I'm a good listener. I ask interesting questions, I hope. And they go, well, what's really going on is this. But of course, we never say that. And I go, right, let's address that. And that's the thing I feel like I can help with. That's the thing I feel like I can do. I want to go into, as well as doing the people, the street level stuff that I'm used to, I also want to go, this big organization can genuinely make a difference, but it's trickle up radicalization. That's my concept, right? You get someone to find the richest capitalist they know and get them into really believe in it. All the sustainability people, I'm saying, look, it boils down to the CEO believes in it, or they've just hired me to tick the boxes so they can get on with making money. And it's one or the other. Yeah. And so that's like a big change that I could play some small part in making. If we get all the people to trickle upwards and go, you need to think this is real. This is really, really real. It's not box ticking. We're not just going to wait for it to go away. And that's a sphere in which I can operate. I find it tremendously exciting to go, it's not just doing jokes on the street or in a club. If I can do a joke to someone whose finger is on the button of where the budget goes for making big change. And I there are so many jokes which are a part of my life. There's a Bill Burr joke or a Mitch Hedberg joke that every time I do a particular thing, I think of that joke. Every time I'm in the shower, every single time I have a shower, I remember Jerry Seinfeld's observation about how when he's in the shower, he always washes himself in the same order, the different parts of his body in the same order every time. Brilliant observation. If I can come up with a joke that someone thinks of every time they're about to throw a compostable cup in the wrong bin, or if I can come up with a joke that every time someone is about to decide where the budget goes for whether they bother checking out scope 1, 2 and 3 properly or whether they fudge it, and they remember my joke, that could change the world.
Jokes change the world. Jokes change the world. That's what we've concluded. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on Your Brain on Climate. The show is called Spoilers. So for anyone anywhere near the Edinburgh Festival, which I will be,
Yes.
I shall come and see it and then take you out for
Yes.
a beer after or something. Where can they see that? And then
It's on-
if people aren't in Edinburgh, how can they get hold of this show?
So the show Spoilers which is an award-winning show. It won an award at the Leicester Comedy Festival in February, March, just as I was going, oh God, can I really do this? And that was such a piece of encouragement. I really needed it. So that is going to be at the Monkey Barrel, which is a venue in central Edinburgh, just off the High Street, and it's going to be at 3:20 every day during the festival, apart from the 16th. And if people want to find out more about me, basically the place to find everything is stuartgoldsmith.com, and you can find out more about the 2 different corporate things I do. I've got a new special on YouTube, which is like a big professionally filmed special, which is my first proper one where someone else has invested in it. All the links are there. From stuartgoldsmith.com, so anyone can go there and find out more about my Comedian podcast, or all of the other plates I find myself constantly spinning, such as the contemporary lifestyle of the portfolio comedian.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Stuart. Thank you for doing that. I've learned a hell of a lot. I really agree. It's sort of given me a bit of a boost. We stopped doing Sustainable as a podcast, and I wasn't entirely sure it was contributing anything. But talk to Stuart. Definitely, there's something in laughter that is incredibly healing. I really agree with that, and does galvanise us to not feel alone and to feel like we can do something. So check out his show. I shall be checking it out when I go to Edinburgh in the summer. I'm sure there'll be ample opportunity to either see that show or to check Stuart out. But yeah, he's very funny. And definitely listen if you're remotely interested in the art and craft of comedy. Listen to the comedian. Stuart is wonderful. Just another plug for the old Patreon. I know all podcasts ask you for it, but you see loads of podcasts out there have got like massive celebrities, and they've got Acast and they've got Spotify's, and they don't need your money. But little tiny podcasts like me, when it's just me in my little room doing this, paying my guests, need your support to keep this show on the road. So please do chuck in a couple of quid if you like it. Go to patreon.com/yourbrainonclimate. And if you can't or you won't do that, that's cool, but please go to iTunes or wherever else you can leave a review and write something. Believe me, it makes a massive difference. Okay, I'll be back next month. Until then, don't take it all so seriously. It's not that it's not massively serious, but we can have a little laugh and a chuckle about it every now and then. You really can. You probably should. All right, bye.